Have you ever wondered what lingers in a house long after its owners are gone? Not just dust and echoes, but the weight of laughter that once rattled the walls, the warmth that curdled into silence, the memories that refused to die. Tonight, you find yourself standing before number 12, Grimmauld Place, that sullen townhouse buried between charm-concealed neighbors, the air so thick it feels like it's judging you for breathing. You know this place. It was a headquarters, a hiding spot, a graveyard of secrets. The moment you step inside, the floorboards groan like they're tired of being forgotten. Every portrait's eye follows you. Every curtain seems to sigh, and somewhere deep within the house, something almost, but not quite, laughs. You probably won't survive this, at least not emotionally, because what haunts Grimmauld Place isn't just ghosts, it's guilt, and that's the kind of spirit you can't banish with a wand. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm really curious, from which part of the world are you watching this video? Write your country in the comments. Let's see how far this little story has traveled. The house smells of burned parchment and cold tea, time trapped in a loop. As you walk down the hall, a single candle flickers to life without warning. Somewhere, in the still air, you think you hear a voice whisper a name, his name. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You move deeper into the house, and the temperature drops like the walls themselves are inhaling. The portraits, once loud with ancestral complaints, now hang slack and faded, but one of them, half burned, half whole, seems almost alive. The face within it flickers like a candle caught in a draft, and for the briefest moment, you think it breathes. Grimmauld Place isn't just haunted, it's listening. The silence here has layers. You can almost taste the arguments that once filled it, the laughter that cut too sharply, the desperate attempts to turn a cursed home into something like a refuge. You pass the old troll leg umbrella stand. Yes, the one that used to trip everyone on purpose, because apparently even furniture here holds grudges, and stop before the staircase. Dust lies thick on every step except one, like someone's been walking here, pacing, restless. Maybe it's just the creaks of an old house, maybe it's not. Historians in the wizarding world often argue whether a soul can truly haunt the place where it suffered, or if magic simply records the residue of pain like a living memory. But the Black family had a knack for breaking the rules of both morality and metaphysics, and that's a dangerous mix. You run your hand along the banister and feel warmth, faint, human. Maybe you're imagining it, or maybe the portrait isn't the only thing breathing here tonight. Upstairs, a door slams on its own, and the whispering starts again, closer this time. The mirror room is smaller than you remember, though it's possible time shrank it. Or maybe grief has a way of folding space when memories press too close together. You step inside, your reflection rippling across the cracked glass panes like a ghost trying to remember its own name. Dust floats in the air, soft as snow, and the scent of old polish and forgotten summers clings to the drapes. The mirror itself, tall and silvered with tarnish, stands at the far end of the room. It's the same two-way mirror Sirius once used, the twin of the one Harry kept. An artifact meant to bridge distance, now a monument to separation. When you approach, your reflection falters, as if something, or someone, moves behind the glass. The wizarding historians call it residual echo, a magical phenomenon where powerful emotion imprints itself onto objects. The more romantic or unhinged, scholars say it's consciousness refusing to fade, clinging to surfaces like condensation. Either way, you've got company. You see movement, just a flicker, a dark figure leaning against a wall, laughing soundlessly, that familiar posture. Half arrogance, half exhaustion. Sirius Black was never good at sitting still, not in life, and apparently not in death either. You whisper his name, not loud, not daring to claim you expect an answer, and yet the mirror trembles as if it heard you. You inch closer, pulse tripping, and there it is again, a shimmer of light, silver and blue, forming a shape that's almost human. His eyes, wild, restless, full of that old reckless loyalty, catch yours for a second before vanishing in a ripple of smoke. The glass fogs with your breath, but you swear you can still feel warmth radiating from the other side. There's a theory in ghost lore, obscure and a bit ridiculous, that says spirits need an anchor, something they can recognize in order to manifest, a name spoken, a memory rekindled, or even a mirror that once reflected them. If that's true, you've just called Sirius home. Somewhere in the reflection, the faintest laugh surfaces, dry, amused, weary. It's the kind of laugh that says, "You again?" Figures. You can almost picture him leaning against the frame, running a hand through that tangle of hair, rolling his eyes like the universe is one long, disappointing joke. You know it's not real, but then again, real is an overrated concept in a world where paintings argue and clocks keep time backward. The mirror glows faintly now, just enough to throw light across the room. You reach out, fingertip grazing the cold surface, and for a moment, you swear it pushes back. The sensation isn't frightening, it's curious, like the magic itself is asking, "Who are you to remember him so clearly?" Scholars once debated whether the veil at the Department of Mysteries was connected to any reflective surface capable of channeling residual soul energy. Most dismissed it as conjecture, but the Blacks were never far from strange artifacts. They collected sorrow like other families collected silver. You find yourself whispering, not words, just sound, as if sound alone could cross whatever boundary separates the living from the remembered. The mirror ripples once more, and you hear it this time, a voice, distant but familiar, dry with humor and regret. "Still poking around old wounds, are you?" It's barely audible, yet unmistakable. And in that instant, you realize the haunting isn't beginning, it's continuing, just as it always has. You don't plan to go searching for him again the next morning, and yet you find yourself drawn back into the house like a tide pulled by something unseen. The storm outside doesn't help. It hurls rain against the windows as if trying to drown the place clean. But Grimmauld Place doesn't believe in cleansing. It clings to its memories. You end up in what used to be Sirius's room, a shrine of contradictions. Posters of Muggle motorcycles peeling off the wall beside a tapestry stitched with the family's dark crest, both declaring war on each other. Dust motes hang in the air like tiny planets, orbiting forgotten grief. You sit on the edge of the bed and notice the uneven floorboard near the nightstand. It's loose. You pry it up, half expecting a ghoul to leap out, or worse, creature's disapproving face, but instead there's only a small stack of letters bound with twine. The parchment is yellowed, the ink smudged, and the handwriting is unmistakable, slanted, impatient, as though written by a man constantly running out of time. Each letter begins the same way. "Harry, my boy." None of them were ever sent. The first letter is brief, written just after Sirius escaped Azkaban. He apologizes for not being the godfather he promised to be, says he tried to write sooner, but there's only so much parchment the ministry doesn't burn. He jokes about how Harry probably hates tea by now, given how British grief makes everyone offer a cup as if it's a cure-all. You almost laugh, almost. The second letter is heavier. He writes about nightmares, about faces that still scream behind his eyelids, about guilt that doesn't know how to die. "Sometimes," he scrawls in a line nearly torn through the paper, "I think the walls of Grimmauld Place are learning to whisper my crimes back to me." That one stops you cold. Maybe the house was listening all along. Maybe that's why it woke when you arrived. You keep reading. The third letter is unfinished, ink blotted halfway through the word freedom. It's dated just a few days before the battle at the Department of Mysteries. The tone shifts. It's almost hopeful. "I think things might finally be changing," he writes. "Harry's not just James's son anymore. He's himself. Reckless, brilliant, and kind. If this fight ends tomorrow, tell him I was proud." There's a smudge below it that could be water damage, or maybe it's something else. Grief has a way of blurring ink, even across years. Historians argue about whether certain magical families carried emotional imprints in their bloodlines, a phenomenon known as inheritance haunting, where despair passes itself down like property. It's considered a myth, of course, but myths tend to start as accidents of truth. As you stack the letters carefully back into their hiding place, something shifts in the air. The candle flickers blue, a color you've seen only once before. The same shade the mirror gave off when it breathed. You glance toward the door. The hallway is dark, too dark, as though the house itself has inhaled. Then you hear it, a faint hum, almost like a tune. It's coming from downstairs, soft but unmistakably human. It's the same melody you remember Tonks humming once when she cleaned the house, a lullaby from Sirius's childhood, meant to soothe restless spirits. The irony isn't lost on you. You follow the sound, step by step, until it fades into silence at the base of the stairs. On the floor lies one of the letters you'd just hidden, now open, the ink still wet despite decades of age. The last line gleams under candlelight. If I ever come back, it won't be for forgiveness. It'll be to finish the conversation. You can't help it. You smile. Even in death, Sirius Black never knew how to say goodbye properly. You wake the next morning to the peculiar feeling that you've been eavesdropping on someone else's dreams. The house hums faintly, alive, aware. Grimmauld Place never sleeps. It just pretends to. Over breakfast, if black coffee and paranoia count as breakfast, you find yourself staring at the black family tapestry hanging on the wall across the kitchen table. It's faded but still regal, stitched with generations of arrogance and bad decisions. Burn marks punctuate the names of those disowned, tiny scars that whisper, "You didn't belong here either." Your eyes catch on one patch near the bottom, Sirius Orion Black, traitor. The word glows faintly, not from magic, but from a kind of bitter permanence. Every time the morning light hits that word, it feels like the house flinches. Scholars often note that magical families like the Blacks wove more than thread into their heirlooms. They wove intent. The tapestry wasn't just a record, it was a curse disguised as heritage. You reach out without thinking, and the fabric pulses beneath your fingers, warm as skin. Somewhere deep inside the weave, something snarls. You jerk your hand back, but the damage is done. The room grows darker, shadows lengthening in unnatural ways, and the air fills with the faint scent of burned parchment. You recognize it immediately. The same scent that followed Sirius everywhere. The smell of spells misfired, of a man constantly trying to outrun his own bloodline. You whisper his name again, and this time the tapestry answers. The threads twist and writhe like living veins, and you glimpse fleeting images woven between generations. A boy running from a house of scowls, a man locked behind iron bars, a figure falling through a stone archway into endless silence. And then you see something else, something no historian ever recorded. A shimmer, like the fabric itself is trying to rewrite its own history. The name Sirius flickers between two states, burned away and restored. For a moment, he exists again among the family that cast him out. Then the glow fades, leaving only smoke and the faintest whisper. I never wanted their redemption. It's strange how haunted objects in this world seem more self-aware than the people who own them. There's a theory, half dismissed by the Department of Mysteries, that emotional curses, once strong enough, become sentient. The Blacks were masters of that. They didn't need inferi or dark spells. Their disdain alone could fuel an entire generation of misery. You remember that Sirius once called his childhood home a museum of pain. He wasn't exaggerating. Even the doorknobs looked judgmental. You pace the kitchen, trying to shake the feeling that someone, or something, is pacing with you, just a few steps behind. You think of the letters again, the mirror, the whispers that sound like laughter at the wrong moments. If Grimmauld Place has learned to remember, maybe it's also learned to regret. Then the fire flares. It shouldn't, no one's lit it, but green flame bursts upward, and in its heart, a shape begins to form. You half expect the sneering face of one of Sirius's ancestors, but what you see instead stops your breath. A silhouette, slouched, familiar. The flame bends around it, shaping itself into that lean frame, those restless hands. You hear a voice, not out loud, but inside the flame itself, quiet, worn, laced with humor. They always said I'd bring shame to the family. Guess I did it properly. The room seems to lean closer, every shadow trembling. You don't answer, not yet. You're too aware of the moment, the way the air thrums with unfinished business. He isn't angry. If anything, he sounds tired of being remembered for the wrong things. The fire dims slowly, leaving only ash and a faint trace of warmth where the apparition had stood. It's enough to tell you one thing. Sirius Black is still here, caught between pride and peace, waiting for someone foolish or brave enough to listen. You apparently qualify as both. You spend the rest of the day pretending that what happened didn't happen, which is a fool's errand in a house that loves pretending more than people do. Grimmauld Place hums like an enormous clock whose pendulum is grief. Each creak of the floorboard feels deliberate. You try the old trick of pretending indifference, wandering into the drawing room, muttering about just checking for curses like a sane person. But the air thickens again, that pre-storm pressure that means the house is watching. Outside, the full moon climbs above the row of hidden houses, its silver light sliding through the shutters. You've read enough folklore to know what this night means. Not the kind that involves werewolves and transformations, though, ironically, one of Sirius's best friends used to own that particular curse, but the kind of night where the veil between memory and moment thins until even rational minds start reaching. The moment the clock strikes midnight, you hear footsteps upstairs. Steady, unhurried, not creature, not your imagination, someone who remembers the floorboards well. When you follow the sound, you find the sitting room door half open, candlelight flickering inside. You step through, and for an instant you swear you're intruding on a conversation that stopped decades ago. The armchair near the fireplace creaks as if someone just leaned back. You almost speak, but another voice beats you to it. Soft, human, and heartbreakingly calm. You always did pick the wrong nights for bravery. You freeze. The voice belongs to no living man, but it's one you've read, heard, imagined, sardonic, low, alive even in its ghostliness. Sirius Black, or whatever is left of him, is here. His form doesn't appear as a transparent wisp. Instead, the air bends around him, the candlelight reshaping itself into his outline, a shimmering absence rather than a presence. His eyes, when you can catch them, reflect the fire like pieces of old silver. "You came back," he says, as if surprised. Most don't. The house eats curiosity for breakfast. You manage to answer, though your voice sounds foreign. "I think it's still mourning you." He chuckles, dry, amused. "That makes two of us." The air lightens slightly, though the temperature drops another few degrees. You can see your breath now, fog curling toward him. He studies you, or maybe through you, his expression unreadable but somehow warmer than you expected. "You've seen the letters," he says, not a question, but a memory. "You shouldn't have, but I'm glad someone did. I wrote too many apologies and not enough jokes." The silence that follows is heavy. You try to say something comforting, but what comfort exists for a man who died mid-sentence? He drifts closer to the fire, the edges of his form flickering like paper in wind. "Funny thing about curses," he murmurs. "Everyone thinks they come from dark wizards and forbidden words, but the worst ones, they come from love that's misused." He gestures vaguely toward the ceiling, toward the rooms that once housed his family's portraits. "They tried to chain me to their pride. I ran, thought I'd escaped. Turns out chains have long memories." He glances at you again, eyes narrowing. "You've felt it, haven't you? The way this house watches. It's not me haunting it. It's it haunting me." You want to ask him what keeps him here, what holds his spirit when so many others have gone beyond. But he beats you to it. "The moon remembers," he says softly, almost to himself. "Every full moon, the light bends through that old window in the library. That's when I hear him. You don't need to ask who. There's only one person whose memory would reach across that kind of distance. Remus Lupin. His name hovers unspoken in the air, like a spell no one dares utter. He used to hum that ridiculous tune when the transformations ended, Sirius says, smiling faintly. Said it helped drown the echoes. I think he was right. Some nights, I still hear it. He looks up toward the ceiling as if listening. And then, impossibly, you hear it too. A low, steady hum threading through the floorboards, resonating in your bones. You stand in silence as the two ghosts, one living, one not, share a sound that doesn't belong to time. For a moment, the house feels lighter, like it's exhaling centuries of bitterness. They said magic leaves marks, Sirius continues, but they never said it leaves comfort. Maybe that's why I'm still here. Maybe I'm waiting for the moment it finally forgives me. You tilt your head. You mean the house? He smirks. No, myself. The fire crackles once, sharp and bright, like laughter caught in ember. You feel an absurd urge to apologize, for intruding, for listening, for surviving, but before you can, his form begins to fade. Don't bother trying to free me, he says, his voice thinning with the smoke. Ghosts don't need rescuing, just remembering then, softer, almost like an afterthought. Tell Harry I never blamed him for moving on. Someone should. The flame dips, leaving only faint warmth where he stood. You stay there long after, staring at the empty chair, the sound of that hum still lingering faintly in the air. Outside, the moon slides behind clouds, and Grimmauld Place sinks back into its favorite illusion, silence. Yet something in that silence feels different now. Not heavy, but watchful, like the calm after forgiveness. You take a deep breath. Somewhere, far beyond the walls, you imagine Sirius laughing again, not trapped, not bitter, but free, finally unburdened by family, legacy, or the weight of being remembered at all. The next night, the rain returns, hammering the windows with a rhythm that feels like an impatient knock. You're too restless to sleep. Who could after hearing a ghost confess that he's haunting himself? You light a single candle, its glow barely stretching across the floorboards, and find yourself drifting toward the library again. The door opens on its own this time, slow and deliberate, like a stage curtain parting. Inside, the air hums faintly, alive with that same static charge you felt before Sirius appeared. The moonlight slants through the glass, spilling across the shelves in pale ribbons. Dust dances through the air, but as your eyes adjust, you realize it's not dust. It's memory. The room has changed. The portraits on the walls have rearranged themselves, a habit of the Black ancestors who always wanted to oversee their guests. But tonight, they're silent, their eyes wide and uncertain. They too can sense what's about to happen. You step toward the center of the room and notice the old two-way mirror on the desk, the one that first shimmered with his voice. It's glowing again, but not faintly this time. It's alive, pulsating like a heartbeat. The sound rises, soft at first, then louder, a whisper becoming a voice becoming a shout. The temperature plummets, and your candle flickers out. You stand in darkness except for the silver glow of the mirror. Inside it, you see not your own reflection, but a scene forming. Dust swirling, stone arches, the echo of a duel. It's the death chamber at the Department of Mysteries. You know the moment before it unfolds. The archway, the veil, the light. This is where Sirius fell. But this time, you're not watching a memory. You're inside it. You can feel the pulse of ancient magic, the cold air of prophecy and consequence. A dozen ghostly figures blur at the edges of your vision, shadows of the duel that ended his life. The sound of spells ricochets through the air, but one voice cuts through it all, raw and fierce. Come on, you can do better than that. And there he is, Sirius Black, alive again for one impossible instant, wand in hand, grin sharp as rebellion itself. He dodges, laughs, moves like a storm given human shape. Then it happens. The flash of light, the gasp, the fall backward through the veil. But before he vanishes, his head turns. This time, his eyes lock on yours. "You shouldn't be here," he says, not in anger, but in warning. Not yet. The sound around you collapses into silence. The veil flutters, a curtain between worlds. You know you should step back, but curiosity is a cruel master. You edge closer, feeling the pull of the archway like gravity itself. The whispers inside the veil rise in pitch. Hundreds of voices speaking, not in unison, but in desperate harmony. Some are pleading, some are laughing, some are simply calling your name. It's said that anyone who listens too long goes mad, but you've already crossed the line between sense and seeking. You reach out a hand, and the air turns solid, cold, smooth, almost liquid. The veil ripples under your touch. For an instant, you see his face again, not as a ghost, but as something between states, half light, half shadow. "Do you ever wonder," Sirius murmurs, "if the veil keeps us in or keeps you out?" You want to ask him what he means, but the words dissolve in your throat. Instead, you hear a low hum spreading through the chamber, resonating like a heartbeat inside stone. The veil itself begins to glow. You step back, wand ready, though it feels useless here. The arch trembles, and the edges of the room warp like melting glass. The historians were right about one thing: time and death are negotiable only to fools. You watch as a silhouette steps forward from behind the curtain, familiar, battered, and heartbreakingly alive. Sirius looks older than the last time you saw him, his expression neither joyous nor sorrowful, but resolved. "This isn't a haunting," he says quietly. "It's a replay." Magic can't let go of what it doesn't understand. He glances up, the ghost of a grin flickering. Apparently, neither can I. The air around you vibrates. You see flashes. Remus shouting his name, Harry's face twisted in disbelief, Bellatrix's smile curdled with triumph. But the scene doesn't stay still. It loops, again and again, like a broken record of fate. Sirius keeps falling, returning, falling again. "You see," he says, voice hoarse with something between anger and awe. "This is the curse of memory. When people can't move on, neither can we." You realize he's not speaking just to you. He's speaking to everyone who ever refused to let him rest. The thought cuts deeper than any hex. "You could leave," you whisper. "Cross over." He shakes his head. "And miss all this melodrama? Not likely." Then softer. "Besides, someone has to keep the house company." You feel the scene thinning, the edges dissolving. The duel fades, the chamber darkens, and the mirror's glow weakens until it's just your reflection again. Shaken, pale, still clutching the wand like it's a lifeline. Behind you, Grimmauld Place breathes once more, as though exhaling the weight of its own memory. The scholars of magical death once argued that love was the only force capable of bridging the living and the beyond. Maybe that's true, but tonight it feels like guilt runs a close second. You set the mirror gently back on the table, the last echo of Sirius's voice still tangled in your head. It's not death that binds us, it's unfinished laughter. Outside, the rain stops. The moon slips free of the clouds. Somewhere, deep inside the house, something finally dares to laugh again. It's faint, but you recognize it instantly. And for the first time since you arrived, you laugh too. Not out of fear, but relief, because the story isn't over yet. It's just remembering itself. The night after the veil vision, sleep becomes an impossible luxury. You lie awake listening to the faint ticking of a clock that hasn't worked since before the Battle of Hogwarts, and you swear it's mocking you for pretending things are normal. When dawn finally cracks through the curtains, it paints the walls of Grimmauld Place a sickly gray, as though even sunlight is reluctant to linger here. You sit up, dizzy from half rest, and feel that same pulse in the air, like the heartbeat of something not quite alive. The mirror on the desk still hums, quieter now, but insistent, as if waiting for a response you never gave. There's a pull beneath your ribs, something you can't name, dragging you toward the basement where the old Black family relics were sealed away. It's cold down there, always has been, a place where even spiders weave in straight lines as if they know not to draw attention. The air smells of rusted metal and spell residue. You light your wand, the tip casting a pale blue glow across the room, and it lands on something strange, a door that shouldn't exist. It's small, hidden behind a collapsed shelf, carved with runes so ancient they look like they've been burned into the wood by something alive. You touch one and it pulses faintly under your fingers. Most of the runes are indecipherable, but one stands out, a symbol that looks eerily like the family crest twisted into something else, something alive. You whisper Alohomora, more out of habit than confidence, and the door yields with a long sigh. The room beyond is tiny, barely larger than a cupboard, and at first glance, empty. But when your light catches the far wall, you see it. A circle of chalk on the floor, smudged by time, but unmistakably magical. At its center rests a single object, a fragment of glass, the twin of the mirror upstairs, shattered and sharp, and within it, a faint shimmer of light moving like breath. You kneel, every instinct screaming not to touch it. But curiosity is a curse older than any family hex. The shard trembles as your wand light nears, and for a heartbeat you see his face again, not the restless spirit but the man, Sirius Black, alive and unguarded, the faintest smile ghosting across his features. "You're getting closer," he says, voice distant yet intimate, as if whispered directly into your ear. But not close enough. You freeze. He shouldn't be this coherent. Ghosts don't gain strength with time. They fade, unless of course they're not ghosts at all. You remember a line from a banned text on soul magic. A splinter of will can linger where death was defied, not by darkness, but by love that refused to end. You stare at the shard again, realization dawning cold and slow. This isn't a haunting. It's a tether. You speak before you can stop yourself. "You're trapped, aren't you?" The air shivers. "Air. Not trapped," comes the reply, softer now. "Bound. Chained to memory by people who couldn't let go. Funny, isn't it? I always swore I'd never be like my family, and now I'm the one haunting the house." The chuckle that follows is brittle but real. You sink down against the wall, the floor biting cold through your clothes. "Can you be freed?" you ask. "Depends who you're freeing," he answers. "Me or yourself?" The question lodges somewhere deep, uncomfortable. He continues. "This place feeds on what it's given. Regret, guilt, longing. They all taste the same to the walls. Stop feeding it, and it stops remembering." You look around the cramped space, the runes pulsing faintly, as though listening. "How?" you ask. Sirius's form flickers, a silhouette made of breath and light. "By forgiving what can't apologize." He glances toward the stairs, toward the rest of the house. "Every curse in this family began with pride and ended with silence. Break that pattern," his voice wavers. "Tell the truth, to it, to yourself, to him." You know who he means. Harry, the boy who became a man while everyone else was busy dying. "He doesn't come here anymore," you murmur. Sirius smiles faintly. "Good. This place isn't meant for the living." The shard glows brighter for a moment, then dims, the image fading until all that's left is a faint warmth in the palm of your hand. The room feels lighter, the air clearer. You realize the circle on the floor has vanished, the chalk erased, the runes fading like smoke. Maybe that's all exorcism really is, a conversation finished. When you step back into the basement corridor, the cold has lifted. For the first time since you arrived, the house feels like a house, not a wound. You glance up the staircase and catch a flicker of light, blue and silver, dancing on the banister before it disappears. Later, as dusk falls, you sit by the old window in the drawing room. Outside, the sky bruises into night, and you can almost see the shape of a great black dog darting between the lamplights, silent, free. Maybe it's imagination, maybe it's him. Either way, you find yourself laughing quietly, the sound small but real. The scholars of magical afterlife would say the boundary between soul and spell is too fragile to map, that even the ministry's unspeakables couldn't define what lingers and why. But you know the answer now. Some souls don't haunt out of vengeance. They linger to make sure their story ends properly. You whisper, barely audible, "Good night, Sirius," and somewhere, faintly, a voice answers, "Finally." The room exhales, and the candle beside you goes out on its own, not from a draft, but from peace. Morning stretches slow and pale over London, and Grimmauld Place looks almost ordinary again, if you ignore the faint shimmer in the air where the house breathes. You stand outside the front door, key in hand, wondering whether to lock it for good. You tell yourself you've finished the story, tied every loose thread, but endings never behave. They fray, they whisper, they find ways to follow you home. You push the door open one last time. The hallway greets you with silence that feels earned rather than forced. Dust hangs in the air like fog after a storm, golden in the sunlight. The ancestral portraits still line the corridor, but their eyes no longer dart to watch you. Some even seem asleep. You walk through slowly, your footsteps soft, reverent. The house is different now, emptier but not hollow. It feels like an old wound that finally stopped bleeding. You find yourself back in Sirius's room. The bed is neatly made, as though someone had tidied up in the night. The letters you once found beneath the floorboard now rest on the desk, stacked neatly, a single quill placed across the top like punctuation. The ink pot beside it has dried, but a faint shimmer clings to the rim, residual magic, the kind left behind by emotion too strong to vanish entirely. You reach for the top letter and hesitate. It feels wrong to disturb something that has found its peace, so instead you rest your hand lightly on the stack. The paper hums faintly beneath your fingers, and a warmth spreads through your chest, slow and steady, like sunlight after a long winter. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaks and the floor settles, as if the house is stretching its limbs after a very long nap. You take a seat by the window, the same spot Sirius must have stared out from as a boy dreaming of escape. The street beyond looks calm, mundane, blissfully unmagical. Muggle children chase a football between the parked cars, their laughter sharp and clean against the soft hum of city life. For a moment, you imagine Sirius watching this same scene decades ago, longing for a life that was his by birthright yet forbidden by blood. He would have liked this peace, the simplicity, the noise, the freedom to exist without being someone's disappointment. You whisper to the empty room, "You got out after all." The air shifts, gentle and approving, and then the faintest sound reaches you, not words, not even a voice, but a soft, almost canine sigh, as if some enormous black dog has settled down at your feet for a rest. You smile, refusing to look. If you look, it'll vanish. Instead, you let it stay. A sound, a feeling, a promise. The scholars would call it delusion. The romantics would call it closure. You simply call it kindness. You rise, brush the dust from your coat, and take one last slow walk through the house. In the library, the mirror now reflects only what it should. Your tired face, your wand light, the faint gleam of old silver on the shelves. No ghostly shimmer, no echoing laughter. In the kitchen, the fireplace glows faintly with embers that will soon cool. And on the wall, that cursed tapestry of lineage has lost its venom. The burn marks have faded to pale scars. In the spot where Sirius Black once flickered between erased and restored, the fabric lies smooth, quiet, as though the argument has finally ended. For a fleeting moment, you swear you see his name there again, not embroidered by hand, but woven by forgiveness. When you reach the front hall, something stops you. The umbrella stand, the one that tripped everyone who dared enter, sits exactly where it always did, but someone, or something, has polished it. Its wooden leg gleams faintly, and when you brush past it, it doesn't trip you. You laugh under your breath. "Truce accepted," you say. The chandelier above gives a soft rattle, almost like applause. The entire house feels lighter, younger, as though shedding centuries of arrogance and pain. Maybe houses, like people, just need someone to listen long enough to remind them they were once homes. You pause at the threshold, hand on the doorknob. Behind you, the hall sighs, the way a place does when it's finally ready to be alone. You whisper, "Goodbye, Sirius," and the silence that answers feels like a smile. The door closes behind you with a gentle click. Outside, the sun climbs higher, catching the row of identical townhouses in its light. Number 12 shimmers for a second, its enchantments reshaping themselves, still hidden from Muggle eyes, but no longer suffocating. Its magic has changed tune, from concealment to rest. You walk down the pavement toward the noise of the city. For the first time in what feels like years, you breathe deeply without tasting dust or regret. Life hums around you. Buses roar, pigeons scatter. A street musician plays a slightly out-of-tune violin that somehow fits the morning perfectly. And in that cacophony, you realize that the story of Sirius Black was never just about death or tragedy. It was about survival, messy, unfinished, defiant survival. He lived as he died, uncontained, unrepentant, and a little bit reckless. You can almost hear his voice again, teasing, "Don't get too comfortable. Peace is just boredom with better lighting." You grin, shaking your head. He would hate being remembered as tragic. Mischievous, yes. Defiant, absolutely. But tragic, never. You reach the end of the street and turn back for one final glance. Grimmauld Place sits quietly, sunlight pooling around its invisible outline. You know it's there, even if no one else can see it. A secret between the world and those who still believe in ghosts that don't frighten but teach. Somewhere, far beyond the veil, or maybe just behind your ribs, you imagine Sirius watching, leaning against a cosmic doorway with that familiar smirk. "Told you I'd never really leave," he'd say. And he's right. The dead only disappear when the living stop telling their stories. You smile, whispering into the morning air, "Rest easy, Padfoot." The breeze that answers is soft, playful, and oddly warm for a London morning. It rustles your coat, brushes your hair, and carries on toward the horizon. You watch it go, heart strangely lighter. Maybe magic isn't about spells at all. Maybe it's about connection, the invisible thread that ties memory to meaning and meaning to mercy. Sirius Black's story will never truly end because some ghosts don't fade. They evolve. They become warmth in the air, laughter in an empty hallway, courage in the bones of those who remember. As you walk away, you realize this isn't an ending at all. It's a beginning. The past has finally learned how to sleep, and the present hums with quiet joy. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks, a deep, familiar sound, and then the city swallows it whole. The day is young, the world vast, and for the first time since you entered that haunted house, you feel ready to live in it. You sit by your window that night, the city lights flickering like candle flames against the dark. There's no haunting now, only memory, and memory, when treated gently, becomes a lullaby. You sip your tea, the warmth grounding you, the quiet filling every corner of the room. The story of Sirius Black lingers, not as sorrow, but as something strangely comforting. His laughter still echoes faintly in the mind, a reminder that rebellion can be a kind of grace, that freedom is rarely clean, but always worth it. You close your eyes and let the day drift away. The rain begins again, soft against the glass, and the sound of it feels like forgiveness. You imagine the house at number 12 glowing faintly under the moonlight, its ghosts finally asleep, its walls dreaming in peace. And maybe, somewhere beyond the veil, a man with a crooked grin leans back, boots up, finally resting. Now, as you sink into the rhythm of the rain, remember this. Every story worth telling ends not with silence, but with stillness. Stillness is the moment the heart exhales. Stillness is where ghosts turn into memories. So breathe in, breathe out. You've walked through shadows and found warmth waiting. Let it stay. Let it soothe you. The night is quiet now. The world for once feels merciful. Sleep well, traveler of stories. Sirius Black is free, and so at last are you.